I'm Heather Mitchell, 28, and I never thought I'd be standing in the NICU, trembling as I held my tiny daughter. Amelia arrived at 32 weeks, barely 3.8 pounds, with tubes everywhere. Through tears, I texted our family group chat. "We're in the NICU. Baby came early. Please pray for us." My phone pinged immediately. My mother-in-law Judith's response stunned me. "Maybe if you hadn't been working so much, this wouldn't have happened." I looked up to see my husband, Thomas's face, his expression mirroring my shock as he read his mother's words. Before I dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever dealt with difficult family members. This story gets intense, and trust me, you'll want to stay until the end to see how we survived this nightmare. I grew up in a middle-class family where hard work was everything. My parents sacrificed to put me through nursing school, and I became a nurse practitioner through sheer determination. I loved my career and was proud of what I'd accomplished. Then I met Thomas Reynolds. He came from old money, with a family name on buildings downtown. Despite our different backgrounds, we connected instantly. Thomas appreciated my independence and drive. It was refreshing compared to the socialites his mother pushed on him. When he proposed after 18 months, I was ecstatic. Meeting Judith Reynolds was sobering. She smiled tightly when Thomas introduced me, her eyes calculating as she took in my department store dress and practical jewelry. "A nurse? How?" "Noble," she said, in a tone that suggested she meant the opposite. The engagement party she threw was my first real taste of the battle ahead. She introduced me to everyone as Thomas's fiancé who works at the hospital, never using my name. When I mentioned plans to continue my career after marriage, Judith loudly interjected, "But of course, she'll reconsider once they start a family. The Reynolds women have always prioritized motherhood." Thomas squeezed my hand but said nothing. After our wedding, things were peaceful for about a year. We bought a home without Judith's input, which nearly caused her a coronary, and settled into married life. Thomas's job as an architect kept him busy, and I continued advancing at the hospital. Then came the dinner where we announced my pregnancy. Initially, there was genuine excitement. Thomas's father William bought cigars, his sisters Rachel and Stephanie talked about hosting a baby shower, and even Judith seemed pleased, hugging me for the first time ever. "A grandchild," she whispered, tears in her eyes. For a moment, I thought having a baby might actually bridge the gap between us. That illusion lasted about 3 weeks. It started with helpful articles about the dangers of working during pregnancy. Then came the calls. "I saw you were online at 2 a.m. Shouldn't you be resting?" The texts. I spoke with my friend whose daughter-in-law miscarried because of job stress. And finally, the direct approach during Sunday dinner. "Thomas, don't you think Heather should consider what's best for the baby and take leave early?" Thomas tried walking the line between us. "Mom, Heather's doctor says everything's fine," he'd say, but then later ask me, "Maybe cutting back hours wouldn't hurt?" The constant pressure was exhausting. When complications arose in my second trimester, Judith pounced. My blood pressure was rising, and my doctor recommended reduced hours. I agreed to a 4-day work week, but Judith viewed this as vindication. "See? Your body is telling you what I've been saying all along." By 30 weeks, I was retaining fluid and my blood pressure wouldn't stabilize. When protein appeared in my urine, my doctor ordered bed rest. 2 weeks later, severe preeclampsia forced an emergency C-section. Our daughter, Amelia Grace Reynolds, arrived tiny but fighting. And that's when I sent the text that would expose just how far Judith would go to control our family. The NICU was a foreign world of beeping monitors, hushed voices, and the constant underlying fear. Amelia was beautiful but frighteningly small, with translucent skin that showed every blue vein. She needed help breathing, couldn't maintain her body temperature, and was fed through a tube. Each time an alarm sounded, my heart stopped. Thomas and I had been at the hospital for 36 hours straight when Judith arrived with Rachel and Stephanie in tow. I was exhausted, unwashed, and still recovering from major surgery. Thomas had gone to find coffee, leaving me alone when they walked in. "Oh, you poor thing," Judith said, but her eyes swept critically over my appearance. She peered at Amelia through the incubator plastic. "So small. It's just not natural for them to come this early. Rachel, at least, gave me a genuine hug. How are you holding up? Before I could answer, Judith cut in. Where's Thomas? I need to speak with him. Her tone made it clear I wasn't included in this conversation. When Thomas returned, Judith pulled him aside. They moved down the hall, but the NICU was quiet and voices carried. I heard fragments. I could have been prevented. Responsibility to that child needs a mother who puts family first. Thomas's responses were lower, defensive. I couldn't make them out, but his body language, shoulders hunched, hands gesturing placatingly told me everything. He wasn't standing up to her. While Judith monopolized Thomas, Rachel sat beside me. I need to tell you something, she whispered. Mom's planning to suggest you all move in with her after Amelia's released. She's already converting the guest room into a nursery. My stomach dropped. Thomas wouldn't agree to that. Rachel's expression was sympathetic but realistic. You know how he gets around Mom. Just be prepared. The next day, Thomas mentioned his mother's generous offer as if it were a casual suggestion, rather than a calculated move to insert herself between us and our daughter. We're not doing that, I said firmly. We have our own home. It was just an idea, Heather. Mom's trying to help. Is she? Because it seems like she's trying to take over. He sighed that familiar sigh, the one that said I was being difficult about his mother again. Can we not do this now? Our daughter is fighting for her life. That effectively silenced me. He was right about one thing Amelia needed to be our focus. But Judith wasn't deterred. She established herself as a constant presence in the NICU, arriving early and staying late. She befriended the nurses, learning medical terminology and asking detailed questions about Amelia's care. To strangers, she appeared to be a devoted grandmother. Only I saw how she subtly undermined me at every turn. Heather's still learning, she'd tell nurses when I asked questions. First-time mom, you know how it is. Or worse. Heather works so much, it's hard for her to keep up with everything going on with the baby. My parents lived 3 states away and couldn't come immediately. Dad had just undergone knee surgery, and Mom couldn't leave him. They called constantly, sent care packages, and promised to visit as soon as possible, but their absence left me without allies. Dr. Bennett, my colleague who was now Amelia's neonatologist, noticed the dynamic. One afternoon, she pulled me aside. Everything okay with your mother-in-law situation? She's been quite involved. I brushed away tears. It's fine. She's just concerned. Dr. Bennett squeezed my arm. You're doing great, Heather. Don't let anyone tell you differently. This isn't your fault. Her validation meant everything. But it didn't stop Judith. The breaking point came on Amelia's 12th day. I had just finished kangaroo care, holding Amelia skin to bond and help her development. Judith had watched the entire session, commenting on my technique, suggesting I adjust positions, pointing out when Amelia fussed. When I carefully returned Amelia to her incubator and stepped out to use the restroom, I returned to find Judith explaining to a new nurse that as a mother who raised 3 children successfully, she knew that Amelia needed more stimulation than I was providing. Something snapped. Judith, I need to speak with you. Now. In the hallway, I kept my voice low but firm. I appreciate your concern, but you need to stop undermining me with the staff. Her expression hardened. I'm only trying to help since you clearly have no idea what you're doing. Maybe if you spent more time learning to be a proper mother instead of focusing on your career, you wouldn't have a premature baby in the NICU. The cruelty of her words stole my breath. Before I could respond, Thomas appeared, frowning at the obvious tension. What's going on? Neither of us answered. Judith's attack hung in the air between us, a declaration of war. After 16 long days in the NICU, Dr. Bennett declared Amelia stable enough to go home. She still weighed only 4.5 pounds, but she was maintaining her temperature, breathing on her own, and feeding well enough to continue gaining weight. Remember, her immune system is still fragile, Dr. Bennett cautioned as she signed the discharge papers. Limit visitors, make sure everyone washes hands thoroughly, and call immediately if her temperature rises or she shows any signs of illness. I nodded, clutching the folder of instructions, feeding schedules, and follow-up appointments. Thomas and I had prepared everything at home: a bassinet in our bedroom, sterilized bottles, preemie diapers, the gentlest detergent for her tiny clothes. Or so I thought. When we pulled into our driveway, Thomas's mother's car was parked in front. My heart sank. "You gave her a key?" I asked. "She wanted to help get things ready," Thomas replied defensively. "She's been through this before." The moment we opened the door, Judith rushed forward, arms outstretched for the car seat. "Let me see my grandbaby." I instinctively pulled the car seat closer. She just fell asleep in the car. "Let's not wake her." Judith's smile tightened. "Well, bring her inside then. I've got everything ready." Everything ready indeed. I stood frozen in the doorway of what had been our carefully prepared nursery. The soft yellow walls we'd painted together were now covered with framed photos of Thomas as a baby alongside Judith. The rocker I'd selected was pushed into a corner, replaced by an ornate antique chair from the Reynolds estate. The simple organic cotton bedding was gone, substituted with frilly, impractical satin. "I know you didn't have time to properly set up, with the baby coming early and all," Judith said, mistaking my silence for appreciation. "So I took care of everything. I've moved into the guest room too, just until you get on your feet." I looked at Thomas in disbelief. He avoided my eyes. "Mom thought it would be helpful. Just for a week or two." That week turned into a month of pure hell. Judith criticized every decision I made. My breast milk came in slowly due to the premature birth and stress, requiring supplemental formula. Instead of support, Judith offered commentary. "Some women just aren't meant to breastfeed." Formula was good enough for Thomas. When I woke at night to pump, trying desperately to increase my supply, she'd appear in the doorway. "You really should be sleeping when the baby sleeps. You look terrible." Thomas returned to work after 2 weeks, leaving me alone with Judith for 10 hours each day. She'd hover when I changed Amelia, suggesting I was doing it wrong. She'd prepare bottles with more formula than I'd measured. She'd take phone calls from her friends, loudly updating them on poor little Amelia and how she was stepping in to make sure the baby gets proper care. One morning, I came downstairs to find Judith holding Amelia while on a video call. "Yes, this is her," she was saying to the screen filled with her country club friends. "I practically haven't slept in weeks making sure she's taken care of properly. Her mother is, well, trying her best, I suppose. Some women just aren't natural mothers." My hands shook as I took Amelia from her. "Excuse us, Judith. It's time for her feeding." She smiled sweetly at her friends. "See what I mean? Always on a schedule, like the babies in a factory. No flexibility at all." The comments extended to social media. Judith posted daily photos of Amelia, taken without my permission, with captions like "Grandmother to the rescue again," or "Another night keeping watch over my precious granddaughter." Each post attracted dozens of sympathetic comments about her selfless dedication and stepping in when needed. My mother called, concerned. "Heather, is everything okay?" From Judith's Facebook posts, "It sounds like you're having a rough time." I broke down, finally admitting how bad things had gotten. "I feel like I'm losing my mind, Mom. She's taken over everything. Thomas doesn't see it." "Your father's knee is better. We're coming this weekend," she said firmly. "Just hang on." The final straw came when I discovered Judith going through my medical records. I'd left my hospital discharge folder on my desk and walked in to find her reading through the pages, including notes about my postpartum mental health screening. "What are you doing?" I demanded, snatching the folder away. She didn't even look embarrassed. "I'm trying to understand why you're not recovering properly. You seem very emotional, unstable, even. It's concerning for the baby's welfare." The implication chilled me. She was building a case against me. "Get out of my room," I whispered. "Now." She left, but not before fixing me with a look that said this wasn't over. 2 days after the medical records incident, my best friend Ashley visited. She lived across the country and hadn't met Amelia yet, flying in specifically to see us. Her arrival was like oxygen when I'd been drowning. Ashley took one look at me, 20 pounds underweight, dark circles under my eyes, jumping at every sound, and her smile vanished. "What's happening to you?" she whispered while hugging me. Before I could answer, Judith appeared, Amelia in her arms. "You must be Ashley. I'm Grandma Judith." Would you like to hold the baby? Heather rarely gets visitors. Her friends find it hard to connect with her these days. Ashley shot me a look but accepted Amelia with a practiced ease from her years as a pediatric nurse. Actually, Heather and I talk almost daily. She's mentioned how involved you've been. Judith's smile never faltered, but her eyes hardened. For the next hour, she hovered around us, interjecting whenever I spoke, correcting my version of events, constantly reminding Ashley how confused I'd been since giving birth. When Judith finally left to run errands, Ashley gripped my hands. "This is not normal, Heather. She's gaslighting you. Has Thomas seen this? He thinks she's helping. He works late most nights." "Convenient," Ashley muttered. "Where is he now?" "Meeting with clients." Ashley pulled out her phone. "Call him. Now. Tell him I need to speak with both of you tonight." Thomas agreed to dinner with Ashley, seeming relieved that I had company besides his mother. When he arrived home, Judith was still out. She'd texted that she was taking Amelia for her pediatrician appointment. "What appointment?" I'd asked, panic rising. "Dr. Miller isn't scheduled until next week. Mom said you forgot to write it down. She took your insurance card from your wallet. Don't worry, she's handled it." That was when I'd broken down completely. Ashley held me while I sobbed, then made the dinner Thomas had promised to bring home. Now, sitting across from my husband with my best friend beside me, I finally told him everything: the constant criticism, the social media campaign, the isolation, the invaded privacy. "You're exaggerating," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Mom's just old school about motherhood. She wants to make sure Amelia is okay. By taking her to doctor appointments without telling me? By telling her friends I'm an unfit mother? By going through my medical records? She did that?" For the first time, Thomas looked truly disturbed. "Yes. And she's been monitoring my calls and messages too. I found my phone in her room last week when she was showering." Thomas shook his head. "That doesn't sound like Mom." Ashley set down her fork. "Thomas, I've known Heather for 15 years. She's the most honest, level-headed person I know. If she says these things are happening, they're happening. But why would my mother?" The front door opened. Judith sailed in with the baby carrier, face arranged in a concerned expression when she spotted Ashley still there. "Oh, you're all having dinner." I would have hurried back sooner if I'd known. The doctor kept us waiting forever. I stood up. "Which doctor, Judith?" "Because I called Dr. Miller's office. There was no appointment today." Her expression didn't waver. "Not Dr. Miller." I took her to Dr. Sanderson for a second opinion. I wasn't satisfied with Miller's assessment of her weight gain. "You took my daughter to an unknown doctor without my consent?" Thomas finally intervened. "Mom, you should have asked us first." Judith's face crumpled into practiced tears. "I was only trying to help. Heather's been so overwhelmed, missing important details. The baby comes first." Thomas immediately softened. "I know, Mom, but still." "Still nothing," I interrupted. "She took Amelia without permission. She lied about an appointment. She's been systematically trying to push me out of my daughter's life, and you've let her." The argument escalated until Judith delivered her killing blow. "Thomas, I didn't want to say this in front of others, but I'm genuinely concerned about postpartum depression. The erratic behavior, the paranoia, the accusations. Heather needs help, not enabling." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was setting me up, creating a narrative of mental instability. And from Thomas's expression, it was working. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I discovered something else. The precious first photos of Amelia on my phone, the only documentation of her earliest days, had been deleted. When confronted the next morning, Judith claimed innocence. "You probably deleted them yourself. You've been so forgetful lately." 2 days later, I found her wearing my deceased grandmother's necklace, a simple pearl pendant that was my most treasured possession. "Where did you get that?" I demanded. "Oh, this old thing? Thomas gave it to me as a thank you for all my help. Said it was just sitting in your jewelry box unworn." I knew it was a lie. That necklace never left its velvet box except for special occasions. When I confronted Thomas, he seemed confused. "I never gave her that." "Are you sure it's the same necklace?" But when I went to find it in my jewelry box, it was gone. That night, I called my mother in tears. I can't do this anymore. She's trying to erase me. We'll be there tomorrow morning, Mom promised. Pack a bag for you and Amelia. Be ready to leave if necessary. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, knowing help was coming. My mother Grace arrived like an avenging angel. Where I had wilted under Judith's constant assault, Mom stood tall. She hugged me fiercely, then held Amelia with the confident hands of a grandmother who had no intention of relinquishing control. You look terrible, she said bluntly. When did you last sleep a full night? Before Judith moved in, Mom nodded grimly. Show me what we're dealing with. I took her on a tour of my now unfamiliar home. The nursery Judith had taken over. The guest room she'd converted into her personal space. The kitchen where she'd rearranged everything to her liking. The living room showcasing new photos of her holding Amelia, while pictures of me were mysteriously absent. Judith wasn't home. She had a standing hair appointment on Friday mornings, giving us time to talk freely. She monitors my calls, I whispered. And I think she's installed something on my phone. Mom's eyes narrowed. She grabbed a notepad and wrote, Let's check the house. Over the next hour, we conducted a thorough sweep. In the nursery, tucked behind the changing table, we found a baby monitor, not ours. Its matching receiver was in Judith's room. She'd been listening to everything in the nursery, including my private conversations with Amelia and phone calls I made while feeding her. Under the sofa cushion in the guest room, Mom found my phone, the old one I thought I'd misplaced when Judith insisted I needed a newer model as a push present. It was still logged into my accounts, but the most disturbing discovery came when Mom checked Judith's iPad, left carelessly on the kitchen counter. It was open to a family group text Thomas, Rachel, Stephanie, and Judith that didn't include me. I'm worried about Heather's attachment to Amelia, Judith had written that morning. She seems resentful when I care for the baby. Thomas, we need to discuss options if this gets worse. Thomas's response made my knees buckle. Let's see how the next few weeks go. I've contacted a therapist like you suggested. They were discussing me as if I were a problem to be solved, as if I were unfit to mother my own child. Rachel, at least, had pushed back. Mom, I think you're overstepping. Heather seems exhausted but not detached. Judith had dismissed her. You don't see what I see daily. There's real cause for concern. Mom took photos of everything with her own phone. This is systematic gaslighting and emotional abuse, she said. And there's more. Look at this. She scrolled through Judith's browser history. Searches for grandparent rights, unfit mother signs, and most chillingly, how to get custody from unstable parent. As we continued investigating, we found emails between Judith and Thomas's previous girlfriend from 6 years ago. Apparently, Judith had performed the same campaign of systematic undermining that had eventually driven her away, isolating her, criticizing her parenting philosophy before they even had children, suggesting mental instability whenever she protested Judith's interference. We were so focused on gathering evidence that we didn't hear Judith return. She stood in the doorway, face contorted with rage when she saw us with her iPad. What do you think you're doing? She hissed. Mom stepped in front of me protectively. Finding out exactly who you are, Judith. I've seen enough. This is my family you're interfering with, Judith said, voice dangerously low. No. This is my daughter and granddaughter you're trying to destroy. It stops now. Thomas's sister Stephanie arrived then, freezing when she sensed the tension. Her eyes darted between us. Perfect timing, Mom said. Stephanie, did you know your mother has been building a case to declare Heather an unfit mother? Stephanie's shocked expression was answer enough. What? No, that's not. Mom, tell her that's not true. Judith's composure cracked slightly. You don't understand. I'm protecting Amelia. From what? I asked, finding my voice at last. From having a mother who loves her? Who wants to raise her? What exactly are you protecting her from? From making the same mistakes I've watched Thomas make his entire life. Judith snapped. Choosing the wrong people. Being too weak to see what's best for him. The admission hung in the air between us. Stephanie looked stricken. Mom, what did you do to Melissa? Who? I asked. Thomas's college girlfriend. The one before you. She left suddenly, and Thomas was devastated. Judith waved dismissively. She wasn't right for him either. You've done this before, I whispered. How many times? As many times as necessary, Judith replied coldly. The Reynolds family has standards. Mom stepped forward. Well, the Mitchell family has lawyers. And everything we found today is going to one immediately. For the first time, fear flickered across Judith's face. Thomas won't allow this. He knows I only want what's best. We'll see about that, Mom said, picking up Amelia's diaper bag. Heather, get the baby. We're leaving. You're not taking my granddaughter anywhere. Judith lunged toward the nursery, but Stephanie blocked her path. Mom, stop. This has gone too far. As I gathered Amelia and her essentials, I heard Stephanie's quiet confession to my mother. She did this to all of Thomas's girlfriends. I thought it would be different with Heather since they got married, had a baby. I should have warned her. We left with Judith's threats echoing behind us. Thomas will never choose you over family. Never. In the car, clutching Amelia to my chest, I finally allowed myself to consider the terrifying possibility. What if she was right? My parents' hotel room became our war room. Dad arrived that evening, his knees still in a brace but his lawyer mind fully engaged. While Mom helped me care for Amelia, he made calls to colleagues in the state, finally connecting me with Catherine Dunham, a family attorney specializing in grandparent interference cases. Document everything, Catherine advised during our emergency meeting the next morning. Every text, every social media post, every witness account. We need to establish a pattern of behavior. I hadn't heard from Thomas since our departure, though my phone showed dozens of missed calls from Judith. He had texted once, "Where are you? Mom's upset. We need to talk." Catherine helped me craft a response. "I've taken Amelia to stay with my parents for a few days. We are safe. I need space to think. We'll contact you soon to arrange a conversation." His reply was immediate. "Your mother has turned you against mine. This isn't like you, Heather." The irony was painful. Judith had spent months turning him against me, and he couldn't see it. Catherine's strategy was comprehensive. First, we gathered evidence. Photographs of the nursery changes, screenshots of Judith's social media campaign, recordings of the baby monitor we'd discovered, statements from Ashley and Stephanie about Judith's behavior. Then we reached out to allies. Dr. Bennett from the NICU provided a statement confirming my attentive care during Amelia's hospitalization. Dr. Miller, outraged that Judith had taken Amelia to another pediatrician without authorization, documented the incident. 3 nurses from the mother-baby unit wrote letters detailing Judith's controlling behavior even in the hospital. Most surprisingly, Thomas's ex-girlfriend Melissa agreed to speak with us. We met at Catherine's office, where Melissa shared her experience. It started small, she said, criticisms disguised as help. Then came the isolation scheduling family events when I had work commitments, making me the villain for missing them. Then the gaslighting moving my things, denying conversations we'd had. When I finally confronted her, she told Thomas I'd had a breakdown and needed professional help. "That's exactly what she's doing to me," I whispered. Melissa nodded sadly. I tried to warn Thomas, but by then he believed I was unstable. I couldn't fight both of them, so I left. Did she target others besides you? At least 3 that I know of. There was Jennifer before me. Thomas dated her for nearly 2 years. Judith convinced him she was cheating. Then someone in high school. Rebecca, I think. Supposedly, she had addiction issues that only Judith could see. This pattern extended back years, possibly Thomas's entire dating life. Judith had systematically removed any woman who threatened her control over her son. With Catherine's guidance, I installed security cameras in my house using a service that backed up footage to the cloud, accessible only with my password. Then I prepared for the hardest part, confronting Thomas with the truth. We met at a neutral location, a private room in Catherine's office building. My parents kept Amelia nearby, but out of sight, recognizing this conversation needed to happen without distractions. Thomas arrived looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes matching my own. "Where's Amelia?" he demanded immediately. "She's safe with my parents," I said calmly. "Thomas, we need to talk about your mother." His expression hardened. "Your mother, you mean?" She swoops in and suddenly you're kidnapping our daughter and making wild accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts, and I have proof. I opened the folder Catherine had helped me prepare. Your mother has been systematically trying to drive me out of Amelia's life and yours. For the next hour, I presented the evidence. Photos, recordings, witness statements, documentation of similar patterns with previous girlfriends. Thomas denied, deflected, defended, until I played the recording from the hidden baby monitor. Judith's voice, crystal clear. Thomas will see the truth eventually, little one. Mommy isn't equipped for this. But Grandma will make sure you're raised properly in a real Reynolds family home, not this starter house your mother insisted on. Thomas went completely still. When was this? Last week. During your late meeting. She didn't know I'd come home early and heard her through the nursery door. So I found the monitor afterward. Something cracked in his expression. She couldn't be planning to. She searched for information on grandparents' custody rights, Thomas. She's building a case against me as an unfit mother. And this isn't the first time she's done this. I showed him the statements from Melissa and others. With each page, his denials weakened. When I reached the documentation of the unauthorized pediatrician visit, he put his head in his hands. I don't want to believe this, he whispered. I know. But ask yourself, what's more likely? That every girlfriend you've ever had is unstable and unworthy? Or that your mother cannot accept sharing you with anyone else? Our conversation lasted hours. Thomas cycled through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally, the beginning of acceptance. He admitted that growing up with Judith had never been easy. She had controlled every aspect of his life, from friends to college choices to career path. I just thought that's what mothers did, he said quietly. Love you enough to make sure you never made mistakes. That's not love, Thomas. That's control. We didn't resolve everything that day, but we established boundaries. Judith would not be allowed unsupervised access to Amelia. She would not have a key to our home. Any disrespect toward me would result in immediate consequences. Thomas agreed to begin therapy to understand the manipulation he'd endured his entire life. I cautiously agreed to return home, but only with security measures in place and my parents staying nearby. What we didn't anticipate was Judith's reaction to losing control. The night before I planned to return home, she escalated beyond anything we had imagined. She filed a report with Child Protective Services, claiming I had abandoned Amelia and was mentally unstable. A social worker named Andrea appeared at my parents' hotel room the next morning. My lawyer Catherine joined us immediately by phone, as Andrea explained the allegations, that I had postpartum psychosis, had kidnapped Amelia from her home, and was refusing necessary medical care for her. These allegations are completely false, Catherine stated firmly. We have documentation proving Mrs. Reynolds removed her daughter from an emotionally abusive environment created by her mother-in-law. The child's father is aware of their location and has been in regular contact. Furthermore, the pediatrician can confirm that all medical appointments have been kept. Andrea conducted a thorough investigation, interviewing me, examining Amelia, reviewing our documentation, and speaking with Thomas, who, to his credit, confirmed that he knew where we were and did not believe Amelia was in danger. Before leaving, Andrea said quietly, "Unfortunately, we see this pattern often family members using CPS as a weapon in domestic disputes. Based on what I've observed, there's no cause for concern about Amelia's welfare in your care." Judith's plan had backfired spectacularly. Now, there was an official record of her false allegations, strengthening our case against her. When I finally returned home with Amelia, the security cameras were in place, the locks were changed, and Thomas had moved his mother's things back to her house. Our real battle was just beginning, but for the first time in months, I slept in my own bed without fear. For 3 weeks, we maintained an uneasy peace. Judith had been formally barred from our home after the false CPS report, which Thomas had reluctantly accepted, was a deliberate attempt to separate me from Amelia. He was attending therapy twice weekly, beginning to recognize the patterns of manipulation that had defined his relationship with his mother. Amelia was thriving, gaining weight, becoming more alert, rewarding us with her first social smiles. I'd returned to work part-time, arranging childcare with Ashley's sister Claire, who was an experienced nanny. Thomas adjusted his schedule to be home when I was working. And slowly, we were finding our rhythm as parents. Then came the text that shattered everything. "We need to talk about moving," Thomas wrote one Tuesday afternoon. "I think Mom's right, we could use more space." My instincts screamed warning. When I called him, he was vague, distracted. "Just an idea. We'll discuss it tonight." I left work early, an unexplainable dread building. Entering our home, I found Thomas in the nursery, packing Amelia's clothes. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He didn't meet my eyes. "I've been thinking about Mom's suggestion. Her house has more room, better schools nearby. It would be temporary, just until we find something bigger." "Thomas, we agreed Judith wouldn't be involved in our decisions anymore. This isn't about space, it's about her controlling Amelia." He continued packing. "Movements mechanical. You're overreacting again. This is practical, not personal. Does your therapist know you're considering this?" His silence was answer enough. "You haven't told her because you know what she'll say," I pressed. "This is exactly the pattern you're supposed to be breaking. It's my mother, Heather. Not some villain in a story. Your mother who filed a false CPS report. Who tried to build a case that I'm an unfit mother. Who installed monitoring devices in our home." Thomas finally stopped packing. "She explained all that. She was concerned, that's all. You were acting erratically after the birth." I stared at him, the truth dawning horribly. "You've been talking to her all along, haven't you? Even during the no-contact period." He had the grace to look ashamed. "She's still my mother. And I'm your wife. Amelia is your daughter. We should come first. You don't understand family loyalty." He muttered Judith's words coming from his mouth. "I understand healthy family dynamics," I countered. "This isn't it." The argument escalated until Thomas finally revealed the full extent of his betrayal. Not only had he been meeting secretly with Judith, but he'd given her medical power of attorney for Amelia. "You what?" I felt physically ill. "It's just a precaution. You were so emotional after the birth, and Mom pointed out that if something happened and you weren't thinking clearly, stop, just stop." I sank onto the ottoman, trying to breathe through the panic. "When did you do this?" "Last week, while I was working. While I thought he was in therapy, recognizing his mother's manipulation. While I believed we were healing." "Why, Thomas? Why would you do this behind my back?" His answer chilled me to the bone. "Mom thinks you're too emotional to make rational decisions about Amelia." I'm starting to agree. They'd planned this together, the ultimate power play. If I objected to any decision about Amelia's care, Judith now had legal authority to override me. I left the nursery in a daze, calling Catherine immediately. She confirmed my fears. While I could challenge the power of attorney, it would remain in effect until a court ruled otherwise. The process could take months. That night, Thomas delivered his ultimatum. Either we all move into Judith's house, or he would take Amelia there without me. "She'll have her own nursery there," he said, as if that justified tearing my family apart. "Mom's already set it up." I went cold. "Already set it up? When?" Thomas looked away. "She's been working on it since Amelia was born. This had been the plan all along, not helping us adjust to parenthood, but creating the perfect opportunity to separate me from my child." The next day, I returned from a doctor's appointment to find our nursery emptied. The crib, changing table, rocking chair all gone. Thomas had moved them to Judith's house while I was out. I called my parents, Catherine, Dr. Bennett, anyone who might help. But legally, Thomas had as much right to Amelia as I did. Without a custody order stating otherwise, he could take her to his mother's house, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. Faced with the unthinkable choice of being separated from my daughter or moving into my abuser's home, I made the only decision I could. That weekend, I packed my essentials and moved into Judith's sprawling colonial, where a small guest room had been generously allocated for me. The next 6 weeks were psychological torture. Judith controlled every aspect of Amelia's care, from feeding schedules to bath time. Thomas worked increasingly long hours, leaving me alone with his mother. I wasn't permitted to take Amelia outside without Judith accompanying us. My phone calls were monitored, my movements tracked, My parenting constantly critiqued. She's not gaining enough weight. Your milk isn't sufficient. That's not how you hold a baby with reflux. Let me show you. She's fussy because she senses your anxiety. Perhaps you should take a break while I settle her. Each night, I documented everything in a journal I kept hidden in my pillowcase, adding to the case Catherine was building. Each morning, I searched for the strength to endure another day. The breaking point came when I discovered Judith had begun the process of legally changing Amelia's name. On her computer, left open while she showered, was a draft petition to add Judith as Amelia's middle name and change her last name to Reynolds Mitchell, placing the family name she valued so highly before mine. In that moment, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. Judith wasn't just trying to control Amelia's upbringing, she was attempting to erase me from my daughter's identity entirely. I texted Catherine a code word we'd established: Phoenix. It meant implementing our emergency plan immediately. The countdown to reclaiming my family had begun. While living in Judith's house, I'd been secretly meeting with Catherine whenever Judith had her weekly hair appointment, the only time I was permitted to take Amelia out alone for fresh air. We'd created a comprehensive strategy that we were now ready to execute. Our legal filing was substantial: emergency temporary custody, a restraining order against Judith, and a petition requiring Thomas to attend family counseling if he wanted continued equal access to Amelia. The documentation included everything: the false CPS report, the unauthorized medical decisions, the hidden monitoring devices, the isolation tactics, and statements from multiple witnesses. Dr. Bennett had become an unexpected champion, outraged by Judith's interference with Amelia's medical care. In 20 years of neonatology, I've never seen such a textbook case of grandparent overreach, she told the court in her affidavit. The mother has consistently demonstrated appropriate care and concern, while the grandmother has repeatedly undermined the parent-child bond during a critical developmental period. My colleague Sarah had organized a group of healthcare professionals who attested to my competence and stability, directly countering Judith's narrative of my supposed instability. Most surprisingly, Thomas's father William contacted me privately. Though he and Judith remained married, they'd lived largely separate lives for years, he at their lake house, she at the main residence. He'd been traveling during most of the early drama but had returned to find the situation spiraling out of control. This isn't the first time, he admitted during our clandestine coffee meeting. Judith has always been controlling. With Thomas especially. I thought she'd improve when he married, had a child. Instead, she's gotten worse. Why didn't you stop it? I asked. The question that had burned in me for months. William looked away, shame evident. The same reason Thomas struggles to stand up to her. Years of conditioning to avoid conflict, to believe her version of reality. It was easier to retreat than to fight. It's not easier for me. Or for Amelia. No, he agreed quietly. And I'm sorry for that. I've enabled this by looking the other way. I'd like to help now, if you'll let me. William's testimony about Judith's history of controlling behavior, particularly regarding Thomas's relationships, became a cornerstone of our case. Coming from her husband of 35 years, his account carried substantial weight. The final piece fell into place when Catherine discovered Judith had begun inquiring about private schools in Switzerland. A draft email to a boarding school admissions office mentioned her granddaughter potentially enrolling in a few years, describing Amelia as being raised primarily by her grandmother due to her mother's career demands. She was planning to send my daughter to another continent. With all evidence assembled, we were ready. The court date was set. I just needed to get through 3 more days in Judith's house without raising suspicion. But Judith sensed something had changed. She increased her surveillance, questioned my every movement, and began sleeping in the nursery to give you a break, dear. The night before our court date, I overheard her on the phone with Thomas. Something's different. I think she's planning something. We might need to accelerate our timeline. My blood ran cold. Catherine had warned me this might happen, that once Judith felt her control slipping, she might take drastic action. I texted William. Need to move now. Can you come? His response was immediate. On my way. Within an hour, William arrived under the pretense of discussing a family business matter with Judith. Their raised voices from the study gave me the distraction I needed to gather Amelia's essentials and my documentation. As I crept downstairs with Amelia in her carrier, I heard Judith screaming, "You've never supported me, never understood what I've sacrificed." William's response was measured but firm. "Controlling our son's life isn't a sacrifice, Judith. It's selfishness. How dare you, after everything I've done for this family?" "This ends now," William said. "Heather and Amelia are leaving tonight." I froze on the stairs, not having told William my exact plans. Before I could process his words, Judith burst from the study, face contorted with rage. She stopped short seeing me with Amelia's packed diaper bag. "You?" she hissed. "You've turned my own husband against me too." "No, Judith. You did that yourself. You're not taking my granddaughter anywhere." She lunged for the carrier. William stepped between us. "Enough, Judith. Let them go." "Never." She tried to push past him. "Thomas will never forgive this. He knows who really loves Amelia." The front door opened. Thomas stood there, expression unreadable. "Dad called me. Said I needed to come home immediately." Judith immediately composed herself, tears replacing rage with practiced precision. "Thomas, thank God. She's trying to kidnap Amelia. Your father's helping her." Thomas looked between us, his father standing protectively near me and Amelia, his mother trembling with calculated distress, and me, clutching our daughter's carrier with determination he'd never seen before. "Is it true?" he asked me. "You're leaving?" "Yes," I said simply. "I have a court hearing tomorrow for emergency custody. Your mother was planning to send Amelia to boarding school eventually. In Switzerland." "That's absurd," Judith cried. "I would never separate a child from her father." "Just from her mother," William said quietly. "Thomas, I've found the emails. The school inquiries. It's all true." Thomas's face went blank with shock. Then, unexpectedly, Judith made a critical error. Sensing her control slipping, she escalated beyond reason. "Fine. Yes. Because I know what's best for her. That child deserves the Reynolds name and legacy, not to be raised by some nurse who doesn't understand our family's position." "Thomas, I've only ever wanted to protect you from another mistake." The silence that followed was deafening. In her desperation, Judith had finally revealed her true self, not a concerned grandmother, but a controlling manipulator who viewed her son's wife and child as possessions to be managed. Thomas stared at his mother as if seeing her for the first time. "Another mistake, like Melissa and Jennifer? And every other relationship you've sabotaged?" "They weren't right for you," Judith insisted. "I had to intervene." "Like you're intervening with my wife and daughter?" Judith changed tactics, voice softening. "Darling, you know how emotional new mothers can be. Heather's been struggling, we've all seen it. I'm just trying to help until she's more stable." "By stealing her child?" Thomas's voice hardened. "By monitoring her calls? By filing false reports? By changing Amelia's name without our knowledge?" Each question hit like a physical blow. Judith's composure cracked completely. "You ungrateful after everything I've done. Who was there when you had chickenpox? When you broke your arm? When you needed college applications? Me. Not your absent father, not your worthless friends, and certainly not these women who only want the Reynolds name and money." In her rage, she knocked over a side table, sending a lamp crashing to the floor. The noise startled Amelia, who began wailing. As I moved to comfort her, Judith lunged again, not for Amelia this time, but for me. "This is all your fault," she screamed, fingers curved like claws. Thomas moved faster than I'd ever seen him, physically restraining his mother. "Stop it. Mom, stop. Let go of me. She's turned you against me." "They always do." The mask had fully dropped, revealing the wounded, controlling woman who had manipulated her son's entire life. Thomas held his struggling mother while nodding to me. "Go," he said quietly. "I'll handle this. Take Amelia to your parents." As I moved toward the door, Judith's screams grew more frantic. "If you leave with her, you'll regret it. I'll make sure of it. Thomas, stop her." But Thomas stood firm, physically positioning himself between his mother and us. "No, Mom. This ends now." With William's help, I secured Amelia in my car. As we drove away, I could still hear Judith's screams from inside the house. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, adrenaline coursing through my system. That night, safe at my parents' house with Amelia sleeping peacefully beside me, I received a text from Thomas. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I'll meet you at court tomorrow." The next morning, Catherine met us at the courthouse. Thomas arrived alone, dark circles under his eyes, evidence of a sleepless night. Judith was conspicuously absent. "She's not coming," he said hollowly. "Dad's taken her to a wellness facility. After you left, she completely broke down. It was like watching someone I didn't recognize." The judge reviewed our evidence and granted the emergency custody order and restraining order against Judith. Thomas didn't contest either motion. Instead, he requested the family counseling mentioned in our petition. "I want to fix this," he told me afterward, voice breaking. "I didn't see what was happening, what's been happening my whole life. I need help to make sure I never let anyone hurt you or Amelia again. Not even my mother." It was the first step on a long road to healing. As we left the courthouse, Amelia secure in my arms and legal protections in place, I felt the weight of months of fear finally beginning to lift. We weren't fully safe yet, but for the first time, we were fighting together rather than against each other. The months following our court hearing were challenging but transformative. Thomas and I moved into a small rental house across town, giving us space from both our families while we rebuilt our marriage and focused on Amelia's development. Judith remained at the wellness facility for 6 weeks, eventually diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and an anxiety condition that had gone untreated for decades. William filed for separation, ending their marriage of convenience after years of emotional distance. Thomas committed fully to therapy, both individual and couples counseling with me. The process was painful as he confronted the reality of his upbringing, a mother who had controlled every aspect of his life under the guise of protection, and a father whose absence had left him vulnerable to her manipulation. "I never realized it wasn't normal," he confessed during one particularly difficult session. "The way she would isolate me from friends she didn't approve of. The way she'd criticize every girlfriend, finding flaws no one else could see. I thought she was just looking out for me because she loved me." "She does love you," our therapist, Dr. Manning, said gently, "but it's a controlling love that doesn't allow for your independence or happiness apart from her. That's not healthy for you, for Heather, or for Amelia." Slowly, Thomas began establishing boundaries with his mother. When Judith was released from the facility, their first meetings were supervised by her therapist. Her initial attempts to minimize her behavior or blame me were met with firm resistance from Thomas. "You tried to take my daughter away from her mother," he stated during one session. "You lied, manipulated, and endangered my family. I can forgive you eventually, Mom, but I will never forget or allow it to happen again." Judith's journey to insight was slower and more reluctant than Thomas's. Her therapist explained that personality disorders require long-term treatment with inconsistent progress. There would be no magical transformation or tearful apology, just small steps toward less harmful behavior. For me, healing came in stages. The first was security. Knowing Amelia was legally protected from Judith's interference, the restraining order was extended for a full year, and Thomas supported my decisions about Amelia's care without question. The second stage was rebuilding trust with Thomas. Through therapy and his consistent efforts to prioritize our family over his mother's demands, I gradually believed in his commitment to change. When Judith sent flying monkeys, friends, and extended family to pressure us for access to Amelia, Thomas shut them down immediately. "My wife and daughter aren't negotiable," he would say firmly. "Mom needs to focus on her own healing before she can be part of our lives again." The third stage was reclaiming myself. During those months under Judith's control, I'd lost confidence in my abilities as a mother and a person. With encouragement from my parents, friends, and my own therapist, I returned to work part-time, reconnected with colleagues, and gradually rediscovered my voice. 6 months after leaving Judith's house, Thomas and I purchased a new home, not the starter house Judith had criticized, but not her grandiose mansion either. Something that was entirely ours, without history or baggage. We painted the nursery together, a cheerful yellow that made Amelia smile. As we settled into our new normal, I connected with a support group for others who had experienced family estrangement. Their stories helped me understand that while our situation was extreme, the underlying dynamics were surprisingly common. Grandparent entitlement is increasing, explained the group facilitator. Many young parents face pressure or criticism from their parents or in-laws, though usually not to the extent you experienced. Setting boundaries is essential, even when it's difficult. Through this group, I began helping other mothers navigate similar situations. My experience as both a healthcare professional and a survivor of family manipulation provided perspective that others found valuable. What Judith had intended for harm had ultimately given me a purpose I might never have discovered otherwise. Thomas's relationship with his mother evolved into something cautious and limited. After completing her initial treatment, Judith began her own therapy journey, not just the required sessions from the court, but voluntary work with a specialist. Whether motivated by genuine insight or simply the desire to maintain some contact with Thomas, she seemed to be trying. A year after our ordeal, we tentatively agreed to a supervised visit. Amelia was now a robust toddler, meeting all developmental milestones and showing a cheerful, resilient personality despite her dramatic early months. The visit was held in a neutral location with a family therapist present. Judith arrived with a gift, not the elaborate boundary-crossing presents of before, but a simple stuffed bear. She sat awkwardly, clearly uncertain how to interact with a grandchild she barely knew. "She's beautiful," Judith said quietly, watching Amelia play. "You've done well with her." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Judith, it was significant progress. "Thank you," I replied simply. As Amelia's first birthday approached, we planned a small celebration, just our immediate families and close friends. The question of inviting Judith loomed large. "I want her there," Thomas said, "but only if you're comfortable with it. You and Amelia come first now. Always." After much consideration, I agreed to include Judith under specific conditions: a limited time frame, other family members present at all times, and a clear understanding that any inappropriate behavior would result in immediate removal. Judith accepted these terms without complaint, another sign of progress. On the day of the party, she arrived appropriately dressed, bearing a reasonable gift, and most importantly, respected our boundaries. She made no attempt to take over, offer unsolicited advice, or monopolize Amelia. As I watched her sitting beside William, their relationship now that of cordial co-grandparents rather than hostile spouses, I reflected on how far we'd all come. The woman who had once seemed capable of destroying my family now sat quietly at the edge of our celebration, grateful for the opportunity to be included at all. That evening, after the guests had departed and we'd put an exhausted Amelia to bed, Thomas and I sat on our back porch, enjoying the peaceful summer twilight. "I never imagined we'd get here," Thomas admitted, taking my hand. "There were moments I thought we'd lost everything." "We almost did," I reminded him. "If we hadn't fought back." "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to fight alone again." In the nursery, we could hear Amelia's gentle breathing through the monitor, a normal, store-bought monitor with no hidden surveillance features. Our daughter would grow up in a home defined by love and respect, not control and manipulation. She would learn about healthy boundaries and conditional relationships with toxic family members. Our journey wasn't over maintaining boundaries. With Judith would be a lifelong process, and Thomas's recovery from his manipulated childhood continued in therapy. But we had reclaimed our power, protected our daughter, and built something stronger from the broken pieces of our family. As we sat together in the quiet evening, I thought about the desperate text message I'd sent from that NICU room a year earlier. "We're in the NICU. Please pray for us." The crisis I'd feared then had indeed come, but not in the form of medical complications. The real danger had been waiting at home, disguised as help and family loyalty. We had survived, though, and emerged stronger. Now, when people ask me for advice about difficult family situations, I tell them what I wish I'd known from the beginning. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And remember that true family, whether by blood or by choice, supports your growth rather than controlling your life. What's your experience with family boundaries? Have you ever had to limit contact with a toxic relative to protect your own family? Drop a comment below and let me know if my story resonated with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. There are so many others facing similar situations who could benefit from hearing they're not alone. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to protect them from those who don't respect your boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey. And I wish you strength in navigating your own family relationships.